Hello, I am Meister Schwert, and made, and I would like to explain a little something I made. One of my favorite Fire Emblem games is Awakening, and since Fire Emblem is my favorite game series, I thought it would be fun and be prudent to make a personal tier list. And some of the criteria for this tier list are, it's assuming hard with efficient, not optimized, but not slow play. So, for example, like grinding every unit to level 2020 is not going to be optimal, but for example, something like, say, doing a paralog in order to recruit a kid unit to help beat a chapter faster would. And this isn't LTC, which LTC is a completely different beast. An LTC tier list looks very different from this. This is just an efficient tier list. And I'm going to be going in reverse order, starting from Tiki. Tiki isn't actually like tiered, because like if you ignore how terrible she is to recruit and how late she can join sometimes, Tiki is up here. Like just straight up Tiki's high A tier otherwise. But her recruitment is so bad and she's so optional that Tiki gets a Tiki Paralog out of 10. And now we can get on to the actual list. I'll be doing kids later, but starting out, Virion. So Virion joins as a level 1 archer in Chapter 1. And while his main reclass option of Wyvern is really good, it takes him super long to get. His bases are nowhere near on par of any of the other shepherds. Archer just doesn't have good skills, and Virion just ends up being one of the worst units in Awakening. Like, probably the worst. And then Sarah. So, Sarah just doesn't have the bases she needs for the parts of the game that she joins in. Sarah joins on Chapter 15 with, it's only like C or B swords. It's not that high. With bases that, for example, a unit like Robin or Panne or Crom had at like level 10. In a game where promoting at 20 is extremely easy. So, Sarah's reclass options are really good, but being able to utilize Sarah's reclass options involve grinding. And C tier is really small for this game, but that's kind of a necessity of Awakening's cast being larger. And another thing that I forgot to mention is that this tier list takes availability into account, and Sarah is less available than most other units in this game. So, Kellum has one main issue, being a 4 move before he can reclass, and that 4 move makes it extremely difficult for him to, say, get out of Armor Knight, which is what he would really desire, because Kellum's reclass options of Thief is really good, and he can also get Great Knight on promotion, which is probably his best class, because it complements like his high defense and high strength really well, while not being that bad for his speed. But honestly, I think I might move Kellum above Donald, just because he is more useful than Donald, but that's beside the point. And then Donald's an interesting unit. He is a level 1 villager who joins as a paralog and has worse bases than even Virion. However, Donald has one redeeming factor, and that is his growths. Donald and his villager class start out with the personal skill Aptitude, which grants plus 20 to all stat growths, meaning that after reclassing, Donald's stat growths are stacked to an insane degree. He is incredibly strong, incredibly fast, incredibly defensive. There isn't a bad growth on Donald, and it makes him one of the best units for online. But since this is efficiency, Donald inefficiency is never used at all. If in LTC, and inefficiency, training Donald is an inefficiency. but because his starting class and skills are so much better than Virion's, and because he can contribute to more of the game than Sarah, Donald is still better than they are. And then Kellum is another. I already explained Kellum. Basilio and Flavia are only here because they joined so late. If Basilio and Flavia joined, say, like chapter 20 or sometime during the Walmart arc, they would be high B tier, low A tier units because Basilio has rally strength, incredibly high stats, high bulk, and doesn't really worry about anything. And Flavia has soul, arms thrift, and all the skills that you usually think of when you think of a broken awakening unit. But their late join time just makes them so much worse than other units. And Stahl is on here because he's incredibly unremarkable in every way. Stahl is incredibly average. It's literally in his unit description. He doesn't have utility that can't be replicated by any better unit. I don't even really remember what his reclasses are, but I don't think they're very good. I need to check this real quick. Okay, yeah. Stahl's reclasses are Myrmidon and Archer, which Myrmidon isn't the worst reclass. You get Pass and Astra, both of which are pretty good skills. And then Archer, I've already explained why Archer is bad in the Virion segment. So even his reclasses aren't very good, and he has trouble doubling things like all game. He starts out with higher sword rank, which he has discipline, so that doesn't really matter, but it would be nice if Stahl had a rank. If Stahl didn't have as high of a sword rank as he does, and instead had a higher lance rank, like Sully. And then Muriel is a magic pair up slash 8-move unit slash bad rescuer. Muriel's main job in life is Muriel, a lot of times an efficient play trying to keep everyone alive, is extremely useful on chapter 5 because she has just enough magic after pair up to give Lissa enough rescue range to rescue Maribel from the highest possible tile that Lissa can go to. And so that's her main utility. And Vake is a similar thing, except Vake is better because he's a strength pair up in a game where a lot of the strength units want more strength to be able to one-shot stuff like warriors and generals and what's that called? And like Zerkers and very high HP enemies. And Gregor is much the same, except Gregor also provides more move, whereas Vike doesn't provide any move, but has a bit of a higher strength bonus. So one thing I've heard Gregor described many times is the best pair-up bot in Awakening, and I am actually inclined to agree with that, because he has incredibly high move bonuses, too, and incredibly high strength and speed bonuses, as well as providing a nice bonus to skill. And he can also promote instantly, meaning he doesn't have to grind at all like the Vake does in order to hit promotion level. And then Ricken. So Ricken has the highest rescue range of any of the rescuers, but he's still what I would consider the worst, solely because he's the hardest to train. Ricken has bad bases, but good growth, which does seem to be a thing with a lot of Awakening units, but his bases are bad by Awakening standards. Ricken is two-shot by Ricken is double and one-rounded by enemy Myrmidons on Chapter 5, his join map. And some of the fighters just outright one-shot him if they roll high on attack, and can double if they roll high on speed. So Ricken is incredibly difficult to train without grinding or doing Donald's Paralog, which is actually his best utility, is raising him in Donald's Paralog. So there's that. And that is B tier. B tier is what I would consider units who are definitely usable, but are far harder to use than what I would start considering as good units, which are A and S tier units. Which, getting into the S tier, is Anna. Anna has one main benefit of being a good combat unit and rescuer, with a high enough rescue range so that it actually matters. Anna's rescue range is, I think, a couple points short of Libra's, but Anna can join as early as like chapter 8, and Libra can't join until chapter 9, which, since chapter 8 is an earlier join time than chapter 9, it's pretty obvious that Anna is better. And Maribel is also a rescuer. This bottom clump is oops, all rescuers. Like, these are units whose main role is to do big rescues, to allow for faster clears on maps like chapter 16, which a lot of players really hate, and I'm probably going to make an explanation video as to why it shouldn't be as hated as it is. Libra, who's got the highest, should probably be above Lissa, but Lissa has 8 more chapters to train, and so can have a higher magic stat than Libra, and I think Lissa has access to a horse. I need to double check that, but I think she has access to the Troubadour class line, which is and Maribel is also hard to keep alive more because Squishy Healer at this center of a map surrounded by wyverns, because thanks, IS. So that's why they're all here, is because they all have the same utility of being extremely good rescuers, better than Ricken because they're easier to train. And it's time for what I call the generic wyvern brigade of generic wyvernness. Cherish, Longku, Naui, and Sully all have almost always the same utility as each other, which is that they provide the role of an early to mid-game wyvern, with Cherish being mid-game and having a bit better bases, but a later join time. Naui having the highest growth rates, but one of the harder times getting to wyvern, and lower bases, though not in wyvern. Naui's wyvern bases are actually typically better than Sully and Longku's. And Sully and Longku are a bit less strong than Naui, but are typically faster and have an earlier join time than Cherish, but require a heart seal. And wyvern access is something I value really highly, because wyvern means deliverer, and there's some maps where deliver is just straight better than Gale Force. Like, especially on route maps, where I don't want to go too fast, but I want more than 8 move, I want to be a deliverer flyer. Maps like chapter 23 or 24, I'd rather be a deliverer flyer than a Gale Force unit. But that is more my own personal opinion on deliver being a just flat out bonus of +2 move while paired up, and Gale Force being more conditional on typically weaker units. And then there is Gaius. Gaius's main role is that he gets pass, he's incredibly strong, he can be a good pair-up backpack if you want it. Gaius is just very good. Because he's able to do a lot of the things he's able to do, he's an innate lockpick, he has access to pass, he can get soul for basically infinite durability. He's one of the best both combat and utility units in Awakening, and he provides +1 move as a pair-up at base, which is really strong. And the +1 move and utility is also something shared by Henry and Tharia. I'm going to move these guys to above the rescuers. Not Gaius. Gaius needs to be above the rescuers. Or wyverns. But, these two are probably worse than the, major, or probably just better than the major rescue units. These two innately have Heartseeker and a promotion to Dark Knight, which is +1 move on pair up, and also cuts into enemy, hit, and avoid a lot. So, because they have access to the skills that they do, they're able to make stuff like the Grima kill, which is fairly unreliable because of stuff like Pavise, and Grima can just Ignis you and you can just die to an unlucky Ignis crit if he or she has crit on you. But these two nullify that risk. So they're here because they're good pair-ups, not because of anything else. And then these three, Sumia and Cordelia, have the utility of being Gale Force units with access to paralogs that you want to do for a good kid unit. Sumia gives you access to Cynthia, who can be a Pegasus Knight with innate Gale Force and can also get Wyvern or Myrmidon, as well as having Great Knight. So Cynthia has really good class sets just from her mother, and Severa, it has good strength, good speed, access to Gale Force, not quite innate pass access, but she can also be a plus move pair up, which Cynthia can also be. So their kids are really good, and they have really good combat. And then Crom is probably the best backpack in the game, on top of, if trained, being an 8-move combat unit with a personal weapon that has effective on Wyverns. Exalted Falchion is a 45 might delete Wyvern button, basically. And that's incredibly strong. Base Crom does 4 damage to hard mode Grima without any strength, any speed, or any skills, with just Exalted Falchion. And that is insane. A trained Crom will likely be doing 16 plus damage to Grima per hit. And A tier is what I would consider good units that don't completely dominate the game or don't have insane utility like the top units do. And starting with S tier, our units are completely insane. The first unit is Olivia. I'm rating Olivia this high because in efficient playthroughs, not even LTC, just efficiency, dancers are always some of the best units in the game. Saying Olivia is dancer out of 10 is not a joke. Olivia is probably the worst dancer in the series, just because dancing isn't quite as needed in a game with Gale Force, but Olivia still has access to one of the best options in the entire game, in that dancing allows for some clears to be incredibly easy. Grima can be a 1 to 2 turn extremely reliably. I don't think there's actually a map that can't be easily beaten with a dancer in a faster amount of time than without. Olivia joins on chapter 11, and I think she has utility in at least 10 chapters as a dancer, which, given that Awakening is 26 chapters long, is pretty good for her 17 maps. I could probably get use out of Olivia on 80% of maps that she's in. And then Lucina is a better Crom. I'm ranking this as all her mothers. Her best is definitely female Robin, because then Lucina gets Gale Force and Ether and can go into any sword class she wants. Which, Lucina's best class without the DLC is probably either Paladin, or if you're just doing the base game, maybe Hero. Though I would still rather go Paladin, just because Paladin has access to stuff like... No, wait, that's Fates, I think, that it has Defender. Paladin still just has really good skills, really high caps for like damage and stuff. And Lucina's main job is that she's going to be aiding in boss kills. She's going to be killing things if you're using female Robin. And then Frederick is incredibly good early game. Memes about Frederick being able to solo the game, or the weapon triangle losing to Frederick, is completely accurate because he's insane. He's got good bases, good growths. He has, I think, one of the highest HP growths in the game in his initial class, 110%. He starts out with B Lances, which is enough to use silvers. A Lances is nice because it gives him a damage boost, but it's nothing that I'd rather have over, say, A axes or even just getting up to B axes, but A lances is still really easy to hit before you can even get the first axe. So Frederick's really good because he basically makes your early game easier and then can continue to just completely mollywop the entire game from there. Panne is probably the best non-Robin unit in the game. I have her tiered as such, non-Robin, non-Kid unit. And that is because, as a Wyvern, Panne's bases are insane. I think she has... I need to check this real quick, but she has very high strength. I'm going to check this real quick. Just give me a minute. Oh, it's being laggy. Yeah. So, Panne has super insane bases in Wyvern. She gets Wyvern, which means she gets Gale Force, and also access to skills like Fast Burn, and 2 breakers for very good weapon types in Swords and Lances. Swords are very prevalent on heroes late game, and Lances basically make about a quarter of the game easier. She has good modifiers. She has both positive strength and speed, which is rare on an Awakening unit that isn't like Robin, and who also gets Wyvern. Sully is neutral strength. Long Q is like +1, so he's similar to Panne, but Panne also has the fact that her bases are better because Beast Stone just gives her a bunch of speed and strength. So her training arc is really easy, and I know a lot of like Mel Robin stuff I've seen has just been Robin and Panne steamrolling the game until you get Yarn and Morgan, until it turns into a Yarn and Morgan steamroll. So there's that. And also, Taguel's skills are pretty good as well. So, like, I think she gets, it's either the odd or even skill, which can help. She has Tantivy for more crit. Panne is just really good. And Mel Robin does much the same things as Panne, except he can also go Sorcerer for a magic boon. But I think if you're going Mel Robin, you want to go Strength boon anyway, because it makes your Yarn and your Morgan better, and Yarn and Morgan are just completely insane steamroll units after you get them. And female Robin is the best unit in the game. Like, there's no disagreement. She has Gale Force, Pass, Deliverer. She can marry Crom, which is insane because their S support is literally free. And that makes a really busted Morgan and Lucina as well. Like, Robin Crom support just allows you to solo the game, even on Lunatic. I think even Lunatic Plus, but I know at the very least on Lunatic difficulty makes it incredibly easy to solo the entire game. So Robin is Robin is probably the best unit in the series, even more so than Byleth, simply because what's that skill called? Tactician's first skill is incredibly solid because it's a plus 50% boost to EXP, which means that getting skills on this unit is incredibly free. Skills in Awakening are by level up, so it's incredibly easy to get stuff like Gale Force or Deliverer or Pass on Robin just because she has such a high EXP gain compared to other units. Last time I used female Robin, just because honestly I feel kind of dirty using her and was setting up in the draft. She gets an insane amount of EXP. That goes for male Robin too, but female Robin can just steamroll the game. Like, harder than any other unit in Awakening, even Fred or male Robin or Panne can. So, I don't think putting female Robin in her own tier is completely different. She has the best classes in the game, even more so than male Robin, because she has Gale Force, which he doesn't. She can do the funny thing where she casts Nosferatu a whole bunch. Male can do that too, but it's better on female. And for the kiddos, Na suffers because it's really hard to pass down skills and classes that are meaningful to her. Nowie is very good in the base game, but Nas Paralog is not fun, 1. 2, it's incredibly long without stupid Meyer strats involving trained sorks shooting this 10 might tome at a boss for 4 turns, which is also not fun. And she just struggles to do things. She's still a fun character to use, and she's not bad by any means. She's a unit in Awakening, but she's definitely not as good as any of the other kids. And if I were to tier her, she's the only kid I would place in B tier. Which Noir struggles because of Archer syndrome. She doesn't have access to any of the crazy skills that at base that Owain or Inigo or Severa or Yarn or Jerome have, and she has to reclass to make a meaningful option, meaning that her choice of dad matters a lot more, and she can end up costing a better unit, like the aforementioned ones, a parent that would matter to them more. But she's still a good unit. She's still probably A tier to go on the main list, but I don't think she's as good as most other units simply because of her starting class. And Laurent is brought down by the fact that using his mom is super difficult, and getting her to an S support is difficult as well, because a lot of the very good magic units are female, so a lot of the units she'd be pairing up to, other than maybe Ricken, would make her super strong. Though, I do like supporting Muriel and Ricken because they both do have the funny, stupid hat. And Brady is held back by the fact that he is a male unit in this game, and a lot of the male classes are physically oriented, and so Maribel doesn't pass down any of the magically oriented classes that he wants to go. He can go Sage, but he really needs Henry Dad to do anything meaningful, because Henry Dad gives him a very high magic stat. So that's for the B tier kids, and then the A tier kids, Kel shouldn't start as an Armor Knight. I'm not sure why she does start as an Armor Knight. Might have something to do with Sully's classes, and them wanting to give some of the kids unique classes from their parent, I guess. But Kiel is mostly held back by the fact that she needs a Heart Seal. She has good classes to go into from base, though, so she's better than the others because she doesn't need a specific dad to be good. She just needs a reclass. And Inigo and Severa both start out as Mercs, which is a good class. But Inigo doesn't get the main class that he wants from his mother, which Inigo would love to get Pegasus Knight from his mother. And he can still get Gale Force. It's just going to be slow and tedious and not fun, because you have to grind Olivia up to level 15 Pegasus Knight. Not Pegasus Knight, Dark Falcon, in order to get him Gale Force, which is slow. His best stat is Crom, just so that way he can get Ether, because Ether is an incredibly broken proc skill. Makes him able to just go to Bow Knight and be an 8-move Ether bot with high sword rank and good stats. Severa, much the same, except she can get Pegasus innately, which is really good. I'm actually going to move her above Odin Dark. She can get Pegasus. She can get Wyvern passed down from one of the Wyvern dads, which is really good because because she can just get Gale Force passed down to her pretty easily, because Cordelia joins at a much higher level than, say, Olivia or Sumia, so getting Gale Force is easier. And Odin he's very strong. If he gets Wyvern, that's good. If he doesn't get Wyvern, that's fine. He can just steamroll the entire game not steamroll, he can just be a good unit as an assassin, going around and stabbing people, shanking people with his sword. He can go Swordmaster for the 5 attack. He can go Swordmaster with a Fred Dad for super high skill. He can have Gaius Father for hero. He's just really good with most of the physical fathers, or magical fathers, because Lissa passes him Sage, which is also really nice. And then Cynthia and Jerome are the innate flyer kids that aren't Morgan, and their mothers are not as amazing as some of the other units. Like Sumia and Shersh are still really good, and they both do have all their class sets, so Sumia can get all her mother's skills, and Jerome can get some of his mother's skills passed down, though he doesn't really want a lot of them. Jerome does want for a class a bit more, but given how good a lot of the physical dads are for him, I don't think it really matters. He can do well even with Virion as his father, and Cynthia can do well with most physical fathers as well, because she'll likely have a higher strength growth than her mother. And then for the S tier kiddos, Yarn is just Pan 2.0, but better because he's got higher base, because he has higher growths, meaning that once he gets rolling, he really gets rolling. He just chucks hand axes at things even faster than Panne does. With a Robin father, which his father is probably going to be one of the Wyverns, Gaius, Fred, or Robin. Which I guess Fred is technically one of the Wyverns, but whatever. He'll have access to Gale Force, Fast Burn, all the skills that make units like a Wyvern really good. And he'll also have incredible bases, because with Longku Dad, he has, I think, +3 strength, +3 speed, because he gains +1 to all stat caps, if I'm remembering correctly. And then Morgan is just Robin Light, except tied to the opposite gender. So female Morgan can get Gale Force, which is very strong. She can get stuff like Gale Force Delivered, the easiest of anyone in the cast, because you can just marry Panne, pass down Gale Force to her, and she's insane. Both pass down Deliver, not Gale Force. You can pass down Deliverer, get to level 10 promoted Dark, get to level 15 promoted Dark Flyer, reclass into any physical class in your set. And that works for Yarn too, except without the Gale Force part, so he's a bit worse. And Male Robin can also get Gale Force from Female Robin, but he can't actually go and get Rally skill and get Rally Magic, because, or not Rally Magic, Rally Movement. He has to choose between that or Gale Force, which is a strict negative of his character, because both are really good skills. But since you're probably using them as an offensive unit anyway, I don't think it matters as much. I'd still say he's worse because, again, he doesn't get that extra, he has to miss out on the extra EXP that going through Gale Force would give him, but he is still one of the best kids in the game, by far. And so, that is my Fire Emblem Awakening tier list. It wasn't that easy to make. I think this took me like a couple hours to make of like looking up stats and stuff. But I probably, for a lot of players, I put too heavy an emphasis on Wyvern, but especially for hard mode, Gale Force can actually just mess you up, because something like a Pavise or another skill can just prevent you from one-rounding, and what are you going to do? Whereas, say, Deliverer, which is one of the best skills in the game, just sort of negates that issue, because, for example, Deliver is just a flat move bonus, so you can just have 2 Deliverer flyers, you can have Panne and Fred with Deliverer and Olivia, and I'm pretty sure that allows you to one-turn military, which I know how much people hate military. I've never really found it all that bad. I'll probably make a Zoran-type video explaining easy ways to cheese the military, but that's beside the point right now. Beating military, that's something a lot of players put value in, and S tier is really good at beating military. Beating maps like 23 is something I put heavy value into, which is why, say, Crom, who also gets 2 range in the form of javelins, is going to be lower than a unit like Fred or Panne, because he's segmented to the top half of the map until half the map's already done. Because Even with the Liver Robin, he can't reach valid. He can't reach the Gruna Simp until turn 2, which that's annoying. It's really annoying. So you can just have Panne and Fred solo the entire bottom half of the map in 4 turns, kill Validar in one fell swoop, and you never have to worry about the rest of the map. So the top units basically invalidating what might be one of the hardest maps in the game is really good. A lot of Awakening maps are flyer kill boss maps, so a big majority of this tier list is just how good does this unit kill thing, or how much utility does this unit bring, and so killing thing dead or getting to bosses quick is the main criteria for this tier list. That is all for now. I am going to be doing a draft race with Mecha, Raisins, and Mute on the 29th. Feel free to come and watch that. Please, if you would like and subscribe, that would be great. Thank you. Thank you, and goodbye.